Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, friends in Facebook social media land. I'm Chris. I'm here at Second to Last. I'm in the cellar. It's Cellar Chats, and we're talking the weekly wine flights. I know, you're surprised. Who knew? This week, it's all about France, baby. Vive la France. So we're going to kick it off with a little lovely Chablis move on from there into the Loire Valley for a little La Surprise from Hauts Baigneaux, a little Grelot-based Rosé, and then round it out down in the Rhône with the always wonderful Famille Gras of Saint-Duc, their Côtes-du-Rhônes. So let's get into this. So we're running the gambit here.
Are you there?
I am.
Okay.
We're running the gambit here for kind of like going from one place to another. We're starting in Chablis, we move to the Loire Valley, and then we bounce ourselves down to the Rhône. I mean, Burgundy, let's be honest, Burgundy doesn't need our help selling their wines. But Chablis, on the other hand, just hasn't quite caught up as far as like the overall like perspective of it being such a wonderful wine place. Now, yes, there are people that champion it, but overall, Chablis oftentimes gets overlooked in the grander conversation about Burgundy, and that is a real shame. It is a crying shame, if you will. And if you live here on the coast, as I assume you do if you're watching this video, Chablis is one of the absolute great shellfish seafood pairing wines that you could ever choose. Just the combination of the soils, the crispness, the freshness, all the things that go into what makes Chablis so special pair perfectly with shellfish and seafood. Wow! Right off the bat, the nose is really mineral, very stony, crisp, vibrant. It's beautiful, beautiful kind of like delicate straw color. Oh my goodness, that is excellent. Again, lots of vibrancy, just mouth-watering freshness. Mineral characteristics from the classic, like what you get here is those Kimmeridgian, why I'm sorry about that word, Kimmeridgian limestone soils, chalk soils, which is basically ancient seabed, and it gives like this kind of salty freshness and vibrancy to the wine. Match that with Chardonnay's characteristic, like vibrant kind of lemon zest, at least in this style. In cool climate, Chardonnay really showcases more of like a citrus zest, citrus characteristic. And as it gets a little bit warmer areas and things like that, it gets a little more full bodied, and that's when you start seeing those orchard fruits like pears and apples and baked and spices and things of that nature. But up in Chablis, where it's rather cold still, despite climate change's efforts to really, really warm things up, it's all about those high-toned mineral, like kind of saline characteristics. And this wine knocks it out of the park in every level. Again, that is Domaine Paul Nicolle, Chablis, just super, super classic Chablis characteristics. All the things you would ever want from Chablis, and then more. All right, and then we're moving. Like I said, we're going to go from the top of Burgundy. We're going to run basically due west, straight across. We're just skirting underneath Champagne, and we're going to head on over to the Loire Valley, and we're going to find ourselves in the Touraine in Rosé-les-Redoux. This is Domaine Hauts Baigneaux. It is about 70% Grelot, which is a native grape variety of this area, and then a little bit of Gamay and a little bit of Côte, which is Malbec. It's called Côte, C-O-T, in the Loire Valley. Not an overly common grape, but it's certainly historically been found there for a long time. And what's really lovely about this wine, and from rosés from this area, Rosé-les-Redoux, if I remember my history correctly, was the third AOC, so like delimited area in France to receive rosé status for their rosé wines, and specifically for rosé based from Grelot. And Grelot, as a red grape, on its own, to me, kind of reminds me of like if Gamay and Cabernet Franc were like smashed together. You get this kind of juicy red fruit character that's really lively like Gamay, but it's got a little like earthy, savory tone like Cabernet Franc, and they just kind of like create this juxtaposition of deliciousness, if you will. Those were a lot of big words for me. I'm done for the day. On the nose, you know, kind of like pretty, slightly underripe strawberry, a little raspberry, maybe a touch of like citrus zest. And for me, what makes this wine kind of stand out amongst other rosés is this just really gorgeous textural element. It's got a nice roundness. It's got like, it's not heavy or full body, but it just has like more texture. And I know I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it, that the majority of rosés that most consumers are familiar with tend to be these very like somewhat insipid, basic, watery. They're delicious when they're ice cold, and they're not so delicious any other time. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with those wines or enjoying those wines. They have a purpose and a place, and that's amazing. But if you really want to know what rosé is capable of and what it can do, this is the kind of rosé that you want to get into. Something that's just got a little more body and texture, and something that is going to stand up to some food, or, you know, be enjoyable when it's not ice cold and 1,000 degrees outside. Although we have plenty of that kind of weather around here. So even right now, it's like 85 and extremely humid. Very uncomfortable for September, almost October. Oh, so good. Again, Hauts Baigneaux, they're La Surprise. Lovely, lovely little blends from the Loire Valley. All right. And now we are headed off to, I keep seeing the slow connection come up, so if this is really jittery, I'm going to say that again. The slow connection keeps coming up, so if this is not super consistent, just know that's why. I'm assuming it has something to do with the immense amount of clouds we have right now. All right, so Domaine Saint-Duc is the estate winery. This bottle has been labeled as Famille Gras, which is the Gras family who has owned Saint-Duc for generations. They started bottling it under this name a handful of years ago, mostly because they purchased a little bit of fruit for this bottling, and they wanted to kind of keep that separated from their estate bottlings of wine. And it's still really high quality. I want to say like 80% of the wine actually does come from their estate. Only a small portion, but everything else that they make under the Domaine Saint-Duc label is from estate-grown vineyards, owned vineyards. So they kind of want to just, separation of church and state, if you will. But these guys, long history in the Southern Rhône. They are based in Gigondas, and arguably are probably one of the most, definitely one of the top, most important producers in Gigondas. And that's an area that, excuse me, I think until recently people really didn't pay attention to. In the heyday of like Southern Rhone wines in the US, which was kind of like late 80s, maybe through the 90s and early 2000s, when Robert Parker was really championing Châteauneuf de Pape, and people started paying attention to it, and Côtes-du-Rhône became like the go-to wine for people for easy drinking by the glass, or like just an everyday wine. And Châteauneuf de Pape was like, hey, this is how how like American California drinkers who love these bigger, richer wines can get into French wine. Drink Châteauneuf because it's bigger and denser and richer and has a lot of high alcohol because it's a very warm place. So Châteauneuf got all of this like kind of attention for good reason. And then the outskirting areas sort of started growing in popularity as Châteauneuf became too expensive and people couldn't buy them. And then that was a really long story of that. But that's how I got to know Gigondas. So these guys are based in Gigondas. They are Grenache heavy for sure. That's really what the Southern Rhone is all about. I mean, they can use up to 26 different grapes, but the majority of the producers are pretty reliant on mostly Grenache, if not all Grenache. This is, I think, right side of the bottle. Does not. I'm just trying to remember all my facts. I want to say it's about 80% Grenache, a little bit of Mourvèdre, a little bit of Syrah, and maybe a touch of Counois, or Carignan, just depends. But all those classic, like, Garrigue, kind of savory, juicy red fruit characteristics. You get that like, that garrigue again is that like dried brush that you get all throughout southern France and in Provence. You get it other places too, but that's what the term they refer to it. You know, things like lavender. It's lavender and thyme and rosemary and all of these like fresh savory herbs that grow all over the countryside. And that aroma is, you know, almost always found in these. It's a classic aroma. Gorgeous. I mean, medium bodied, a little bit of spice on the back end, darker fruits. This does get done in, I think, mostly concrete with a little bit of neutral oak, but it's mostly inert containers. So something that doesn't give the wine any kind of flavor. I had trouble getting that out. But you just get these kind of like blackberry, raspberry characters, spicy savoriness. Again, more of that garrigue, a little lavender, a little bit of thyme, a little bit of rosemary. Just a really beautiful wine. Okay, so again, this week, weekly wine flights at Second Glass, kicking it off. Paul Nicolle, Chablis Vieilles Vignes. That just means old vines, in case you were wondering. Domaine Hauts Baigneaux, La Surprise de Rosé from the Hauts-les-Redoux. And then finishing it out, Famille Gras, their Vieilles Vignes Côtes-du-Rhônes. Lovely, lovely stuff. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for coming out and supporting. Get some flights. Hang out with your friends. Be kind. I'll see y'all next week.